welcome to today's session of Leadership Lecture Series. I'm Aman Asim. I'm a fifth year undergrad from Department of Humanities and Social Sciences. Today we are honored to host an IIT Madras legend, Dr. Sailesh Rao, from the class of 1981, BTech, Electrical Engineering, distinguished Alumnus Awardee 2013, and founder and executive director of Climate Healers, a non-profit dedicated towards healing the Earth's life support systems. He is an environmentalist by occupation and a systems engineer by profession. He invented the protocol for transforming early analog internet connections into more robust digital ones while accelerating their speed by 10%, 10 times. Yeah. He's now a human, earth, and animal liberation activist, championing a system software solution to our global environmental health, social, and ethical crisis that he calls Planet B. So now here we are at a tipping point between two worlds. One is world A, that is planet A, and the other, that is the world we inherited. It is based on domination, deception, denial, and unconscious myths. The other world, which is planet B, is a world we are called to co-create. It is based on humility, honesty, harmony, and the conscious axioms. So Dr. Rao's talk, Planet B, Engineering for High Stakes Planet Healing, it examines how we can engineer human systems to align with Earth's life support systems using this new operating system, that is Planet B, while achieving world peace and planetary health by designing on planet Earth by itself. So please welcome Dr. Sailesh Rao, sir. With this, we also request Sujata ma'am to, if she could please come forward and extend a small token of appreciation from us.
Thank you all for being here. I call it high stakes planet healing because knowing what I know, I wake up every morning grateful that I'm still able to breathe. It's a sense of urgency I feel in the message I'm going to give you now. I'm going to talk to you about this new operating system that I've been working on called Planet B. So it began, last year at the Oxford Literary Festival. So 2 years ago at the Oxford Literary Festival, the organizer asked me to come back and present a book. And I said, I've already written a book called The Pinky Promise. I could come and present it next year. And she said, no, you have to write another one. And she asked me, what would the title be if you wrote another one? And I blurted out, there is a Planet B. Okay, and that's how this book came about. And it's been going through my mind because I've seen a book by Mike Berners-Lee saying there is no Planet B. And I saw that and I said, no, there is a Planet B. What is this Planet B? It's basically the world of Planet A turned upside down. Okay, so everything you do, you have to do the exact opposite. So imagine, a system like that. How would you do this? Now I call it engineering for high stakes planet healing because engineering is at the core of this issue. So there is a planetary polycrisis that we are facing today. So I've listed like 26 different crises. But these 26 different crises all stem from human engineered systems that drive our civilization, that you're all taught to create. Human engineered systems are driving these crises. Okay? So ecological crisis, there's mass extinction happening, chemical pollution, it's a huge one. We're actually pouring like 220 billion tons of chemicals into the environment every year. The planet is not able to handle this. Because we did all our systems assuming that the planet is an infinite sink for waste and an infinite source for resources. And we are now discovering it's not true. Third is disruption of nutrient cycles, nitrogen and phosphorus cycles. And the fourth is climate breakdown. Okay, it's not even the worst problem we are facing, it's the fourth worst problem we are facing. Then ecosystems collapse, basically, forests turning into deserts, and freshwater depletion, and finally ocean acidification. So those are the 7 known crises in the ecology of our planet. And then we have the opposite of that is institutional. Okay, but I'll go to the personal one. And Gus Peth said that selfishness, greed, and apathy are the 3 main environmental problems we are facing today. Okay, so that's a personal issue. It's how we see things. Second is chronic diseases, so that's number 9. Chronic diseases are basically, we are getting sicker and sicker as a population over time. And that's also engineered. Then mental health, obesity, excessive drug use, and misaligned worldviews. So our worldviews are misaligned with reality, which means that we do things routinely that cause the planet to die. Okay. So then institutional, miseducation. So we are taught all kinds of myths that are not true. Authoritarianism, which we now see rampant throughout the world. Then mass surveillance, endless growth, endless war, runaway AI, runaway CRISPR. Almost any one of these things are sufficient to kill all of us if we let it go. Then finally, social issues, world hunger, colonialism. I call it colonialism 2.0, and then slavery 2.0, because it's still going on, it's just in a different form. Then public health crises, we're seeing pandemics all over the place. Then loss of community, and finally, rising inequality. So these are the list of 26 crises caused by Planet A's engineering systems. So what is a system? A system is an organized framework for solving problems, for accomplishing an objective. So it has an objective function, it has constraints, and it has feedback loops for meeting those objective functions. So typically this 3 set creates a system. There are plenty of systems all around us. Like we have systems in our body that take care of us. So we have circulatory system, a digestive system, an excretory system, an immune system, and so on. When all these systems are working well, we are healthy. But if any one system fails, it can bring down all of them. So these are interlocked systems that work together. So if the circulatory system fails, let's say your heart stops, then you stop getting oxygen to your cells, and therefore all the other systems start dying off. That's called death. Death is a catastrophic failure of systems. Now the earth has similar life support systems. It's a system for cleaning water, it's a system for maintaining oxygen in the atmosphere, it's a system for making sure that the species are there. So there's a nutrient cycle, there's a carbon cycle, there are all kinds of cycles that stabilize life on the planet. And we have been, through our human engineered systems, interfering with the life support systems of the planet. Interfering to the point where now there are 2 of them that are at high risk of destabilizing the life support systems of the planet. So there are 7 planetary boundary transgressions that we have identified out of 9. So out of 9, there are 7 of them that have gone out of the green zone and into the red zone, orange zone. So if it's yellow, it's just come out of the green zone and it's cause for concern. Orange zone, it's danger. Red zone, if you leave it there, it's sufficient to kill life as we know it. Okay? And purple means that it's at high risk of destabilizing the life support systems today. So the 2 that are in the purple zone are species extinction. So we have wiped out a lot of species and wild animals are literally dying off in front of our eyes. And chemical pollution. So we are pouring the equivalent of 30 elephants of chemical waste into the environment every year per person. And all of these chemicals are now marinating in the trees. Because it comes down in the water, it's in the water, the trees absorb the water through and then they filter the chemicals out and they store it in their trunks and their branches. So the trees every year are getting more and more laden with chemicals. They're getting marinated. And so when human beings, like village women, cut branches of trees and burn them for firewood, they get all the chemicals in the smoke that they breathe. So it is it has reduced their lifespan by about 80 years right now. Okay, and so and simultaneously we are cutting the trees out, so there are less and less trees every year, and it's getting harder and harder for the trees to absorb the next batch of 220 billion tons of chemicals we put into the environment. So this is why chemical engineering has to rethink all its processes, because we have come up with over 350,000 different chemicals that the planet had never seen before. This is why it's called novel entities. Then comes the nutrient disruption, the nitrogen and phosphorus loading. So what that does is, and it's through all the fertilizers we put for industrial agriculture, and most of the fertilizer runs off in the water. It goes into the freshwater systems of our planet, and it over-fertilizes the bottom of rivers. And when it over-fertilizes the bottom of rivers, the plants grow really fast, and they die altogether. And then the bacteria that's decomposing the plants suck all the oxygen out of the water. And so you get an oxygen-free zone in freshwater systems of the planet. And all the fish die because they're not able to breathe. So you have dead zones in rivers and in the mouths of rivers throughout the world today. And that's killing more life than even climate change. Climate change is number 4. And in climate change, it's basically the effective radiative forcing, the ERF, which is the amount of heating we are doing on the planet. So we have added about 3 watts per square meter of heating over and above the 130 watts that the sun gives us. So it seems like it's only like 2% over what the sun is giving us. So how can that be a big issue, right? But in reality, that 2% happens in 200 million years over the natural course of how the sun evolves. And we have done it in 200 years. When you do it that fast, it becomes like a fever that the earth has. And the earth is not able to adjust. Species are not able to adjust and to die because of that. So then comes land system change. This is where the ecosystems collapse comes from, because we are taking so much of the land for ourselves and not enough is left for wild animals, and they're dying because of that. And then freshwater. So we have dammed the freshwater systems of the planet, and we have impacted the freshwater systems of the planet by cutting down forests. And finally, it's ocean acidification. So because we've added so much CO2 into the atmosphere, the ocean is getting more and more acidic. And it's now in danger of so that shelled animals are not able to make shells anymore. And they will start dying because of that. So that's now just crossed green into the yellow zone. Now this all sounds like bad news, right? Depressing news. But I have good news for you. The reason we haven't been able to solve it is not because we don't know how to solve it. The reason we haven't been able to solve it is because we use what I call the drunkard's search principle for solving problems. So what is the drunkard's search principle? It's a story about a drunkard who is looking for something under the streetlight. And the policeman asks him, "What are you looking for?" The drunkard says, "I'm looking for the keys I dropped on the other side of the street." And the policeman says, "So why are you looking for it here?" He said, "Because this is where the light is." Unfortunately, that's exactly what we do in our civilization. We don't look for solutions outside the light of economic growth or profits. If it doesn't make some money for somebody, or if it doesn't grow the economy, it's not a valid solution. So we have problems for which solutions are there in the darkness outside the light. But we are refusing to see it. So that's all I'm trying to do is I'm going to shine the light wider and show you how we can solve problems. So if you look at the small yellow thing I showed, the media focus so far has been mainly on climate change. You would think the only environmental problem we are facing is climate change, right? Why? Because it's being framed as a green growth story. So you can buy electric cars and solar panels and solve the problem. If you look outside the light, you see the black dots. That's the role of the food system. The food system alone causes all of those planetary boundary transgressions by itself. Okay? And we know this. So you've known this since 2017. This was the paper by Campbell in 2017. Now, why is that? And then I also want to show you that even in the climate story, we are being misled. Because there's a lot of deception in the system. We are being misled. Because you look at the block diagram from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, showing the biomass flows of the planet. So on the left is the land area of the planet, and you see the arrows, that's the total biomass that's going out of that, or materials that are going out of each of these land areas. And then there is the livestock system block, then there is a processing block, and then there's a consumption block. Consumption is where we are actually doing the consumption. That's where it comes to our plate. There's food, and there's energy, and then there's materials. Okay? Now the livestock system is taking most of the biomass from the planet. You see the thicker arrows are going in there. And then you have this thin arrow going from there, right? Thin arrow going from there to this food block. And that gets processed, some of it gets wasted, and then the rest goes in here. So this takes both plant input and animal input. Okay. And there is another block, there's another arrow that goes from the animals block to other industries and manufacturing. So that's the skin and the blood and the bones from the animals that we use for leather coats and shoes and glue and so on. So I want to show you that the total amount of food that we get on our plates, I want to break that down and show you where it comes from. So here is the land area of the planet, the ice-free land area of the planet. So that's 130 million square kilometers total. If you take all the cities and railroads and highways and put it together, it's only 1% of the land area of the planet. 19% is unused land, deserts and mountains, etc. Now the forests, according to the UN, is 31%. But I broke that down to show you what it really is. 22% is monocultured trees. When you have monocultured trees, like the same tree over and over, animals cannot live there. So it's really literally a dead forest. It's just trees growing there. Okay? So that's for all of our, lumber and paper and so on. In fact, paper is a huge source of chemical pollution also. Okay? Then 9% is original forests. Okay? This is as of like a decade ago, and it's come down since then. Okay, I don't have the exact numbers now. 37% is for grazing farmed animals. And then half the crop output is going to feed our farmed animals. More than half, actually. So totally, our animals are using 43% of the land area of the planet, and they're giving us 12% of the food we eat. This is worldwide, if you look at it worldwide. 12% of the food we eat, this is in terms of dry weight, and this includes meat, dairy, eggs, all put together. 3% comes from the ocean. 85% is already coming from plants. Because if you look at your plate, typically you have lots of rice and you have starch. That's the main source of food for most human beings. And that's plants. So 85% is already plants. Now, 12% of the food we get is from land animals, and then 10% of the material also comes from land animals. So 90% of the material is already coming from plants or minerals right now. So what we have to do, we have to engineer a system in which we can turn this into 100%. If you did that, you can eliminate the entire livestock system block and you can free 40% of the land area of the planet. to restore to the original ecosystems. And that's the only way I know of solving all 7 planetary boundary transgressions, as well as all the other 19 social issues that we face today. So if you want a system that addresses world peace and planetary health, to me, world peace and planetary health are together. You have to solve them together. Because if you are focused on solving, on restoring planetary health, we have to collaborate across the entire world to do that. That automatically brings you world peace. So you have to organize around that and brings you world peace. And this is why I promote what I call vegan. Okay? I call vegan as vitally engaged guardians of animals and nature. Now I know a lot of people are repelled by this word because the system on planet A has made it so that you're repelled by it. Because it's opposing the system. It's a different system we are building. Okay? And you look at the definition of vegan and you say, why is that bad? A way of living that seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose. What is bad about that? I mean, would you deliberately hurt an innocent animal unnecessarily? No one would do that. So it's literally asking us to be ourselves. That's what vegan is. And people come to veganism from multiple portals, through ecology, what it's doing to the environment. I just showed you what it's doing to the environment. For health, because as you eat animal foods, you are getting a lot of toxins. All the chemical pollution is there in the plants. The animals are eating it and they're storing it in their bodies. So they concentrate it by another 1 to 2 orders of magnitude. So that's why it's impacting health now. It's impacting our spirituality, because we are basically, hurting animals unnecessarily, and we know it subconsciously. Okay? And it's for ethics. To be kind to each other and to be kind to all life. Because you cannot restore the biodiversity of the planet while exploiting animals. It just doesn't work. So if our focus is to restore the biodiversity of the planet, because it happens to be one of the purple level violations of the planetary boundary, then we have to go vegan. I don't see any other way to do it. So in a vegan world, you can return 40% of the land back to nature. And you can then restore the 3 trillion trees that we have cut. So there used to be 6 trillion trees on the planet. Now there are only 3 trillion trees left. We have cut half the trees on the planet. But bringing back the original ecosystems on that 40% of the land, you can restore the 3 trillion trees that we cut, and that will soak up the extra chemical pollution that we have put into the environment. And it will also give room for wild animals to live. So this is the outline of the solution, and I'm going to show you now how you would formalize it. Now, this is also the leading cause of climate change. And yet, this is not what you hear from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. See, the IPCC shows you that first pie chart. It says that fossil fuels are responsible for 48% of the warming we are experiencing today. 13% comes from industry, and then 24% from animal agriculture, 5% from other agriculture, and 5% from forestry, and 3% from other sources. No, 3% from waste and 2% from other sources. Okay? So that's the official pie chart you get from the IPCC. Now with the same IPCC's data, Jared Wedderburn Bishop wrote a paper in 2025 showing that fossil fuels have only caused 18% of the warming. 5% came from industry. 52% came from animal agriculture. 8% came from other agriculture. 10% from forestry, and 7% from waste. The same IPCC data is giving you this second pie chart. And I took Jared Bishop's spreadsheet and I tweaked one number in that, the CO2 sensitivity number. From 3 degrees Celsius, I made it 4.5 degrees Celsius, because that's what Jim Hansen had said. So don't worry about the details of this. It's just one number I tweaked, and it gave me this third pie chart. The fossil fuels are responsible for just 2% of the warming. 66% came from animal agriculture, 10% from other agriculture, 15% from forestry, 7% from waste. So how is it that the same data is giving you multiple pie charts like this? Wildly different. Because the IPCC uses guidelines that were decided in 1996 when they only had access, when they knew about 4 different greenhouse gases. Okay? CO2, methane, nitrous oxide, and halocarbons. And so that's what they did. And they used something called the GWP 100. It's a global warming potential for 100 years. So they averaged the impact of the gases over 100 years and then normalize it to a CO2 equivalent. So that's how they came up with this pie chart. So what Gerard Bishop did was to say, since 1996, we know that there are a lot of other gases. So he counted all of them. So in addition to CO2, methane, nitrous oxide, and halocarbons, we also have non-methane volatile organic compounds plus carbon monoxide. We also have black carbon. And then we have several cooling effects like sulfur dioxide, nitrous oxide, ammonia, organic carbon, and surface albedo. And he used a metric called the effective radiative forcing, which is the amount of heating that's caused today by the increase in these gases. And when you do that, from the same IPCC data, you get this pie chart. So you see that fossil fuels are not only warming the planet, but they're also cooling the planet. This is why if today I wave a magic wand and eliminate the entire fossil fuel infrastructure and replace it with solar or wind sources overnight, the heating on the planet will increase, not decrease, within a few weeks. Because you lose all the cooling effects and you will see the full effect of the warming that fossil fuels have done so far. Right now we don't experience it. It's being masked by the cooling gases. Now when you change the sensitivity, the CO2 doubling sensitivity. So CO2 doubling sensitivity means if I kept all the other gases the same and just doubled the CO2 and waited for equilibrium, how much will the Earth's temperature increase? Assuming that none of the feedback loops are going to trigger. And the IPCC is using a Chinese sensitivity of 3 degrees Celsius. So it's saying that if I double CO2 and leave everything else the same, the temperature on Earth will increase by 3 degrees Celsius. And Hansen claimed that it actually is an underestimate. It's actually 4.5 degrees Celsius. And that's because we have underestimated the cooling impact of SO2 and the heating impact of CO2. And it's cancelled out. So if you took that sensitivity, you will see that fossil fuels have caused a lot of warming, but the same amount of cooling. That's where they almost cancel out. Now this is not a good thing. It means that we cannot keep doing this. We have to eliminate fossil fuels too. Okay? But you have to do it in a nuanced way. Whereas you can eliminate animal agriculture right away. So the right order in which you solve the problem is first eliminate animal agriculture and then dial down the fossil fuel use for the next 30 years or so. That's what the optimum solution is. So why are we not solving this problem properly? Noam Chomsky said, the smart way to keep people passive and obedient is to strictly limit the spectrum of acceptable opinion, but allow very lively debate within that spectrum, even encourage the more critical and dissident views. So that gives people the sense that there is free thinking going on, while all the time the presuppositions of the system are being reinforced by the limits put on the range of the debate. You don't realize you're looking only under the light, but you can have vigorous debate within the light. So we are all being deceived into going along with the system. And this is well known. So the Barkana Institute had this 2 loops theory of change, where it said that big living systems can never be changed from within. They will find a way to continue, keep going. But then they reach a peak and then they start declining. So right now we are in this stage. where planet A is in hospice, is literally dying in front of our eyes. So this is why you see all kinds of pathologies like Trump, for instance. Okay? And simultaneously, planet B is in emergence. Planet B is the second loop. Planet B is the loop in which we are deliberately restoring the planet, in which we are relinquishing land back to nature, in which we are doing what it takes to make that happen. So reducing our consumption, reducing and stop eating animals. So I see the vegan movement as the innovators. And there are lots of innovators, not just vegan movement, people who are working on rewilding. They're innovators too. There are lots of people working on different aspects of this transformation. And then we connect together. And that's really what's happening now. Now we have to systematize this planet B so that this becomes the dominant loop going forward. And then we can help people transition from planet A to planet B. Okay? So this is how big systems change. Not with violence, but through a transformation. And this is my formal approach for solving this problem. How do you go from planet A to planet B? So I have these 6 blocks. First is establish the intractability of the system, show that it cannot be changed from within. Secondly, identify the foundational myths that drive planet A. Because the reason it's unsustainable is because we are misaligned with nature. So we have to identify the myths to know what is it that we are misaligned in. And then replace the myths with foundational axioms that we can all agree on. The difference between a myth and an axiom is a myth is something that we inherited unconsciously. And we see the world through the lens of the myths. Whereas an axiom is something that we choose deliberately. Since we choose it deliberately, we control it. And we can decide to change it if we want, if we think it's not right. Then drop invalid goals, because the system is dependent on the objective functions of the system. So if your goal is economic growth, you're going to be stuck on planet A. Okay, GDP growth, you're going to be stuck on planet A. There's nothing you can do about it. So you have to change the goals. You have to drop invalid goals like economic growth and include valid goals like zero animal exploitation. And then you design a system to meet these new goals. So I begin with the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. The reason is that 195 nations have already signed to meet those goals by 2030. So I'm saying, I'm an engineer, I'm a systems engineer. I'm here to help you. You really want to meet them? I can help you meet them. But you have to do it systematically. You have to do it formally, and you have to do it seriously. And I'm happy to help you do that. Then design the system for that, and then create transition pathways to go from planet A to planet B. So this is how you solve the problem systematically. So first, establishing that legacy systems cannot be changed. I show that colonialism is still going on. We were made to, wave different flags, sing different anthems, but the extraction from the colonies back to the mother country is still continuing. Or to Europe, for that matter. It's just all of them put together now. Okay. So what is colonialism? It's just taking resources from the colonies and using it for the benefit of the colonizers. That's still going on. Same with slavery. Slavery is still going on, even though we abolished it 150 years ago. There are more slaves today than there were in 1860. And now it's being done in a very underhanded way, through the prison systems and so on. So this shows that legacy systems cannot be changed from within. And here are the foundational myths. Now there are lots of them, but I had to identify a few and say these are the foundations and the rest can be built on top of this. Number one, protein is only found in animal foods. So that's a myth that 90% of Americans believe. And it is untrue. Why? Because you see elephants eating just plants and growing so big. All kinds of animals eat just plants and grow so big. So there's plenty of protein in plant foods. In fact, all plant foods have all amino acids and have complete protein. So I'll show you that. Calcium is only found in dairy foods. It's the next myth that we are taught. And they do this by telling you, if you want calcium, drink milk. If you want calcium, drink milk. And you begin to think that only milk has calcium. We don't realize that all plants have calcium. Some with more calcium than milk, and some with less calcium than milk. So Dr. McDougall said, if you eat enough calories, you'll get enough calcium. So both protein and calcium are nutrients of no concern. And yet, that's the one that everyone focuses on because of these two myths. Then endless growth is the master objective. Everything has to grow. Even nations who are consuming at 5 times the rate that the planet can support want to grow. Everybody is trying to grow. And that is a myth. Because the myth is that growth is necessary for human well-being. And it's not true. Fourth is consumption and commodification as social logic. So we organize around this. And all of these myths work well together. Okay? In separation from nature and human exceptionalism, we think we are different from other animals, that we are actually superior species. I've got news for you. Other animals know exactly what to eat, and we still haven't figured it out. Yeah. A misspecified responsibility for ecological breakdown. We keep pretending it's just fossil fuels and got nothing to do with our lifestyles. And finally, technological solutions for environmental constraints. We think that there is a solution that's going to come from better technology. We have hit the limits of what technology can do. So, and right now we have to really look at solving it at its root. So the foundational axioms on planet B: 1, interdependence of all life; nonviolence and zero animal exploitation; sufficiency over growth. So we need to meet everyone's needs; honesty and humility as design criteria. So we have to have some humility towards other animals too. Universal provisioning within planetary limits. Make sure that everyone gets fed, everyone gets, meet the goals as you said you're going to meet. Distributed participatory governance. And finally, technology subordinated life. So this is how you would build a system. You first put down the axioms that we are going to all agree on, and then say, how do you build a system around it? Protein myth. So I show you all the amino acids in different foods. On the top batch is animal foods, and you can see the essential amino acids and the non-essential amino acids. And you can see legumes, grains, nuts, vegetables, fruits, and mushrooms. All of them have all the amino acids. Okay, and have complete protein. This is why animals don't even have to think about it. They eat plants and they grow big. By the way, the University of Minnesota has a database of 10,500 foods. And all plant foods. There's not a single one that's missing any one amino acid. The calcium myth. I mean, especially dairy in India. My God. 60 to 80% of Indians cannot even digest dairy. We are lactose intolerant. And you can see where it originated. That's where the people who can digest lactose are. And the dairy industry in India was funded by the European Economic Commission because they wanted cheap beef from India. And they're getting it now. Okay? India is the second largest exporter of beef on the planet. And all cheap beef comes from dairy cows. Because the dairy cow is already paid for by the dairy consumer. And then she gets chopped up and turned into cheap beef. Drop invalid goals. Invalid goal number 8. Goal number 8 is invalid. The economic growth is invalid. So I have a goal validity test that I wrote, and I apply it to all the goals, and this one failed miserably. Every other goal passed. Then include valid goals like zero animal exploitation, which makes all the other goals easy to meet. So I took the SDGs, 17 SDGs of the UN, and I dropped goal number 8 and added goal number 18. That makes it a valid set of objectives that we can meet in the new system for Planet B. So the set is no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality. These are all great goals. And all the nations have agreed to meet them by 2030, in just 4 years. So when you have a target like that, you're going to meet everything by 2030. Normally in an engineering project, I need to know what are the milestones? How far along are you? None of them are showing any of that. None of the nations are showing any of that. So I'm saying, let's have some seriousness in this project. And so if you really want to meet them, I'm happy to help any nation meet them. So how do you design Planet B now with these new goals and the new axioms? First, you have to figure out the ethical and biophysical constraints, do the provisioning, equity, and resilience requirements, create a self-learning system so that we can adapt as we go along. Ahimsa coined economic substrate, so it's an economic substrate that is no longer about growth, and a food production and distribution system, an ecological restoration system, health system integration, governance and participation, and planetary monitoring system. So this way you're making sure that all the red transgressions are coming towards the green zone. Transition pathways, we have to normalize plant-based living fast. We need to make it normal. This is what we used to be. Idli sambar, dal chawal, roti sabji, these are all vegan foods. So our basic foods were vegan. And so someone came along and said, no, that's very inferior food. You have to eat like us. But they were living in Europe. They had to do that when it's cold there. Now they are getting supermarkets and they have lots of good vegetables there too. So they are going vegan fast. And we are trying to ape them. I'm saying, excuse me, you need to stick to what you already have. Our ancestors really knew what they were doing. So our food systems as it was good. Right? Transform institutions simultaneously. And then frame veganism as a justice issue. It's not a personal choice. It's a justice issue for all life. Leverage technology and media. I need to use all the social media channels to promote Planet B. And then build minimum viable experiments in 10 to 20 cities, in land corridors, economic ledgers. Make plant-based the easy, affordable default. So I would like IIT, for instance, to have plant-based as the default in the cafeterias. Why? Because we are engineers. We understand systems engineering. And systems engineering 101 is telling us, you have to do this. And it's not that I'm taking away choices from anybody. You can still eat meat, but you have to ask for it. You have to ask for the animal foods if you want it. And you have to pay extra for that. So that's how you create this environment where plant-based living is normalized. And activate courageous leadership. We have to talk about these things openly. Not just hide and say, we don't go there because it's too uncomfortable. So we have to transform engineering education. So this is why I mainly wanted to come and talk to you all here. So, because engineering education right now is causing us to send out engineers who are destroying the planet. So how do you create engineers, send out engineers who are going to restore the planet? First, design within planetary boundaries. These are the broad principles for all the curriculum. Mimic natural systems, integrate life cycle thinking, center systems thinking, prioritize sufficiency over efficiency. It's not about finding the last great efficiency. It's about saying, is this necessary? And how do you design systems that are repairable? And include true cost accounting. Look at every aspect of the waste that you're producing and show me that that's going to be integrated into the ecosystems of the planet. So I would say there are some required courses that every engineer needs to have taken. Planetary boundaries in Earth system science, everyone needs to know that. Ecological design and biomimicry, everyone needs to know that. Life cycle assessment and circular economy. In fact, I would say even high schools need to do these things. Okay, but since we haven't done that in high school, we are here already, I would suggest that these courses have to be required. Systems thinking and complex systems modeling, environmental ethics and justice, and regenerative design principles. So I'm proposing a convergence of engineering educators sometime around June of this year, where we get together on day one. We talk about the planetary boundaries framework and engineering responsibility. What is causing it? It's us. We are doing it, so we have to take responsibility for it. And we have to then figure out how to solve the problem. On day two, the different disciplines will get together and figure out how to change the curriculum to make it more amenable to what the planet needs. And then development of new modified courses for planetary thriving. And on day three, we create the model syllabi for submission to national boards, and then formation of engineering educators for planetary thriving. I think there should be an organization we need to create and have a declaration for that, so that we take responsibility for restoring the planetary boundaries of the planet. Okay, and I am proposing that this happen in IIT. Why should IIT host it? Because IITM will become the leader in Planet B engineering if IIT does it. It will be the first to embark on a systems approach like Planet B. It will be the first to ensure that future engineers are equipped to deal with the world we have, not the world we wish it was. It's not an infinite world we are living in. It's a finite world, and she's dying. So we have to address this. And I think this ranking is much more relevant than what IIT is trying to aim to be now. You don't want to be number one in Planet A engineering, okay? And it's going to be difficult to overtake Stanford and MIT in that ranking. And besides, is that really what you want to be known as? You know, to me, it's like engineers are going to get a bad reputation in the future. Planet A engineering. It'll be like the Joseph Mengeles of the climate era, because we are experimenting on Mother Earth. You know? So I say that let's focus on making Planet B engineering education the focus of IITM and be number one in it. And this will be a landmark event in human history. I really believe everyone will talk about this in the future once we sort the problem out. Okay? And it raises the profile of IITM instantly, because international educators are going to be coming to do this. And we have to do this as if our house is on fire. When your house is on fire, you drop your routines. You don't say, how do I make my coffee? Where's my breakfast? No, you put out the fire first. You have to, so this is what I mean by the urgency that we need to have. And if you look at how the planetary boundaries have progressed, it was 3 transgressions in 2009. It became 4 transgressions by 2015, 6 transgressions by 2023, and 7 transgressions by 2025. If this is not a fire, I don't know what is. So the earth is urgently sending us signals saying, wake up. You're going down the wrong way. You're going over a cliff. And this is what I see Planet B today. It's already happening everywhere. So I just listed out the vegan restaurants, vegan rewilding projects, and the vegan businesses in the world and how they are spread. Join this. So Planet B is already being built. Okay? It's just putting some framework around it and formalizing it. And I see this as part of a 50,000-year-long project that our ancestors have been working on. 50,000 years ago, they migrated out of Africa, went to every part of the world, and they became an invasive species everywhere. But in reality, we are the only species that knew how to start fires. And that's what we did, starting this 10,000 years ago in agriculture. We started fires everywhere, we heated up the planet, we maintained the temperature of the earth for the last 10,000 years. And then over the last 200 years, we've increased it by 1.5 degrees Celsius. Okay. So now we know we did that. We have all the thermometers we need. We have all the instruments we need to understand. Once you are able to change the life support systems of the planet, you own it. We own the life support systems of the planet, whether we like it or not. We have to maintain it and stabilize it and keep it going on behalf of all life. That's our job. So we have become the thermostat species of the planet, whether we like it or not, right? Because the other animals are looking at us saying, do your job and wake up. Because we are part of life. We are part of all life. We have always been a part of life. We have always been a part of nature. We are still a part of nature. So I have a couple of copies of my book. There is a Planet B, which is about what we need to do and why we have to do it. And I'm writing now a new book called A Guidebook to Planet B. And the book you can also download as a PDF from that website. And I wrote a couple of papers. The paper at the bottom is like a formal introduction to Planet B as a systems engineering framework for world peace and planetary health. And that got published in the Journal of Planetary Health. And then the other paper just got accepted for publication, and it's a paper in the digital science, and it says that Planet B is like lifestyle medicine for the planet. So it's really lifestyle engineering for the planet. Just like lifestyle medicine addresses the root cause of problems and makes you healthy, we are addressing the root cause of problems for the planet and making her healthy. So thank you all very much. Any questions? Any discussions? Yes.
So the SO2 is the primary source of that from the fossil fuel is the cargo used by, I mean the fuel used by the cargo to transport material, primarily through ships, is my understanding.
Ships and diesel trucks, and there are lots of others that are doing that.
But I thought that was already accounted for in the models that have these net.
Correct.
1.5.
That's the SO2. That's the SO2. That's what it's causing. That's the current estimate from the IPCC. The SO2 is causing like 1.1 watts of cooling. 1.1 watts per square meter of cooling.
So in the same plot, so what is the source of CO2 from the animals that you have there?
This is deforestation. And so deforestation, again, what Jared Bishop did was to say that you have to look at gross accounting, not net accounting. So he did gross accounting for CO2, because what the IPCC has been saying is that for deforestation, if I deforest 100 million acres here and I abandon 70 million acres somewhere else, I only have to count 30 million acres. Now, first of all, so I begin with axioms. So my axiom is number one, all CO2 emissions are the same. CO2 is CO2, no matter where it comes from. First axiom. Second axiom is that photosynthesis occurs through the grace of nature, and humans have no business claiming credit for it. Humans are responsible for emissions, they're not responsible for sequestering. Right?
So, because the reason I was asking was, the global GCMs, they are able to predict all the past quite
Correct.
accurately as it stands
Correct.
right now.
Yeah.
So if
Because
there was some extra accounting that was missing, the GCMs would have gotten it wrong.
No. The GCMs are looking at the net.
Correct, but if the split is somehow not being accounted,
They're looking at the net heating, that's all. See, for them, it's the net CO2 that goes up that matters. It's not what gets sequestered. So now it's a matter of where did it come from.
so you're saying the part of it is actually from there and not from fossil fuels.
Correct, yeah.
So I had one quick question also. So, in the Indian context, the distribution that you show is going to be considerably different, right, in terms of land use and
Yeah,
animal
we need to
use.
create if you go back to the previous one, Sindhu, to the block diagram of the land use. Yeah, this one, yeah. So we need to create something like this for India, for every nation. This is just global from the IPCC.
Because Kamal Bawa, so he had some claims that restoration is somehow in the Indian context, not super feasible. That's the reason that I was asking.
No, it's very much feasible. I mean, look, the Western Ghats have been devastated since I left. Yeah, and there's plenty of CO2 that can be sequestered if you restore the Western Ghat forests. and lots of forests around. And we really don't need that much land. You see, look at, I calculated, if all of us, all 8 billion of us got together in one spot and did a group hug, you would cover maybe Delhi. All human beings will cover Delhi. That's it. We don't need that much space as we think. Okay? All the rest can be given back to nature. So here I'm assuming, when I go to the next one, I'm assuming here that we are still logging 22% of the land area of the planet for forests. We don't have to do that. That's for toilet paper and all kinds of things we use there, you know. And there's tremendous waste. So Donella Meadows, the system scientist from MIT, said that 99% of human activities today are unnecessary and wasteful. We deliberately break things and fix them. Why? Because you have to have jobs. If you don't have jobs, people are going to go hungry. So we have a jobs for wages type of model. And you have to just change that model.
Thank you.
What is the ideal business model would you like to have in Planet B, and what are the trade-offs that need to be taken to stay competitive?
Correct. The whole Ahimsa coin economic substrate is based on the idea that you have a finite biocapacity of the planet and you have to stay within that biocapacity. So you have to then create true costs for every product that's created. You have to you have to calculate the true cost of how much biocapacity it used from the planet.
How do you define true cost here?
True cost is how much land did you use, how much fresh water did you use, how much of the materials did you use, and what kind of pollutants did you put out to create that product. So we have to figure out a measure of the true cost based on that,
Okay, so
not based on what the market
we have
will
to define
bear.
a unit as well.
Hmm?
So we have to define a unit for resources.
Correct. I call it A, Ahimsa coin, A. And so we have come up, basically I'm doing systems engineering, saying how would I do this in a way that if everyone trades with this, you stay within the bounds of the planet.
Do you think
Because
this is complicating the system more?
complicating the system?
More.
No, it's actually, you have to, basically you start off, you can have the same rupee cost first, and then you have a color code.
Okay.
It basically says, is it red or yellow or green?
Okay. Okay.
So you start with that, okay?
It makes sense.
And then slowly that green, you have to have magnitude of the green. And that will become the true cost. Or the magnitude of the yellow, that becomes the true cost. So that's how you do the transition. So I imagine this to be like having Windows and Linux on the same computer at the same time. Okay? And you can press a function key and go from one to the other. Right? So Planet A and Planet B are going to cooperate. I mean, will be on the same planet. And most of the time we'll be using Planet B protocols. Sometimes you may go to Planet A protocols. And eventually Planet A becomes disused.
These animals, that are getting culled as well as, what we consume. If over a period of time, from our ancestors' time, if this had been turned to Planet B, in much earlier, what would be the status now, with, how would be the co-living with all these animals, which would have also probably grown in population by now,
Yeah, if you look at the trend that has happened, the wild animals are now down by more than 90% from what they used to be in 10,000 years ago. Okay, but our farmed animals, they were very small 10,000 years ago in terms of total weight, and now they are 5 times the weight of all the wild animals that lived 10,000 years ago. Okay, and they're eating double their weight. What do I mean by that? The farmed animals are all very young animals. We literally eat babies. So they grow really fast. So because they grow really fast, they eat way more food than their weight would indicate. So if you had a normal mix of that population of animals, they would have eaten only half the food for the same weight. Because we have only mostly young animals, they're eating double their weight. So the weight of or the equivalent weight of farmed animals today is now 10 times the weight of all the wild animals that lived 10,000 years ago. This is why the earth is not able to handle the waste that comes out of it. Right? This is why the waste is running off and causing dead zones and all kinds of problems. Yeah. So if we had kept it as it was, planet B, we would have 1/10 the weight of animals, but they would all be mostly wild animals. So basically, our system takes biodiversity and converts it to monocultures. Planet A, that's what it does. Because it identifies what is the most profitable and just multiplies it like crazy.
So that's why you're advocating that land be given back to the forest.
Right, yeah. We have to do that just from a solution point of view. See, when you do that, you can solve all of these problems. All of them will go from red towards green. Some of them, I don't know if they'll go from red towards green, but we can only find out after we start trying. You won't know until you try it. I don't know if the wild animals will come back. I don't know if we have gone beyond the point of no return on that. And the same with the chemical pollution. I don't know if you've gone beyond the point of no return. But the only way to find out is actually try it. If you don't try it, you will never know. Because these systems are so complex, it's almost impossible to model it and tell you how to do it. Yeah. The wolves. Yeah, the wolves, yeah. Correct. Same, I think the animals are quite forgiving. They'll figure out a way to come back, and there'll be other animals that will come and fill in the holes in the ecosystem. So I suspect we can heal it, but we don't know. Like the corals. The tropical corals, the scientists are saying they've gone beyond the point of no return. They'll never come back. They're dead. Now that's going to impact the ecosystem in the ocean tremendously. Now, is that true? I don't know. I claim that you cannot know until you actually start cooling the ocean and see if the coral comes back. Right? Because it's so complex. You cannot say, well, it's gone beyond the point of no return, so there's no point in even trying. No, we have to try. We have to try to cool the ocean. And so bring back the forest, cool the ocean, and see if the corals come back. Only then will we know if you've gone beyond the point of no return. So these are all nonlinear feedback loops that are going in the wrong direction, but we have to figure out how to bring them back over time. But nothing starts until you actually do it. Yes.
And all that.
I don't know if you heard there was a woman in Greenland who was responding to Trump. I don't know did you hear her at all? So she basically said, in Greenland, nobody owns land. They don't own the land. They say the land belongs to all of us. It belongs to all the life. It cannot be owned by private people. They only lease the land that they're sitting on, they're building the house on. So they said if America takes over Greenland, they're going to come and say, I own this. But that's not our culture at all. So how did we get sucked into a culture in which I put a fence around it and said, this is mine? Who told us that? You paid for it. How? Through this game we were playing, right? Game of money. And it's a game of money that's actually enslaving people right now. I mean, think of all the people all the young girls who were abused in the Epstein files, right? They were abused because they were looking for a quick way out to make some money. So the promise of Planet A is that if you make enough money, you will be forgiven for anything you do. So the world is your oyster. You can do whatever you want, and you don't have to pay the consequences. That's the promise of Planet A. Is that the system you want? So we have to figure out different ways of organizing ourselves. So when you organize yourself towards an objective function, then you can actually formalize it. And so I agree that this is like solving the problems that Buddha was trying to solve, or Jesus was trying to solve, and Muhammad was trying to solve. I mean, this is the problem that everyone was trying to solve, right? World peace and planetary health. Now we have to do it. If we don't do it, we're going to die. So we have been given all the tools we need to actually solve the problem. Unlike them, they didn't have those tools. Like I worked on the internet, and I remember going to lunch with the chairman of the Ethernet committee from those days in 2013. And I told him, Jeff, we tried to connect people, but in the process we disconnected them. Because right next table, there were 4 people sitting and having lunch, and they were all looking at their phones, not even talking to each other. Right? And Jeff told me, no, you built a tool. So go figure out how to use that tool for the purpose you wanted to use it for, just to connect people. And in a way, it has done it too. These days, it's easy for us to figure out, to know that so-and-so in Tokyo is just the same as us because of the internet. It's because of the internet we are finding out all these lies. So in a way, it's doing both. It's which one do you amplify? Which one do you focus on? Same with AI. So I say AI is a tremendous tool for increasing your productivity. But if you use it to put hats on people's heads in photos, you're misusing it. Right? Or you use it to create an entire, alternate reality. You're misusing it. Like I think your finance minister of India, they made her hawk something on the internet. So I see this ad with her saying, you just pay 20,000 rupees and we'll give you 5 lakhs every year. Right? Obviously fake, right? But it's her face, her voice, and she's saying all these things. So that's what they use AI for. Yeah. So it's what intention you start with and how you use the tool. But the tools are there. Always objective function matters, and the constraint set matters for the system. According to Statista, India is one of the largest population of vegans in the world. Yeah, because a lot of rural people are vegan. Yeah, I mean, I've gone to villages in Rajasthan, and they're only eating jawar roti and sabji. Well, vegetarian, according to the current definition, can eat dairy and eggs, and so you have lacto-vegetarian, ovo-vegetarian, or lacto-ovo-vegetarian, and so on. There are different categories, but it's an ethical stance saying that I don't want to kill the animal, but I can take some substances from the animal. And what we don't realize is that when we take those substances from the animals, like dairy, someone is killing the animal. Okay, it's happening outside that, but if someone is killing the animal, and the animal has to be raised for that purpose, so which means the land has to be used. So then, vegans don't use animals for any purpose whatsoever. Try not to. So I went vegan in 2008. Okay. So now I'm in a position where if I eat anything from animals accidentally, I get sick. Yeah. So I had diarrhea this morning because I ate something yesterday. I'm sure there was some animal food maybe in the chutney or something. Yeah. So the estimate is now about 200 million people around the world are vegan, about 2.5%. And as you can see, that is spread out throughout the world. So it's a movement. So this is why I think nature is the perfect system design. Nature knows what she's doing. She's turning us vegan, okay, everywhere. And she's waking us up, slapping us around, saying, wake up, wake up. and more and more of us are waking up to it, right? So it's about 2.5%, but it's spread out throughout the world. This is why it's such a beautiful movement. So I spoke to some indigenous people in Brazil when I went to COP30. And so COP30 is the UN climate change meeting that happened in Brazil this year, or last year. And I told them, when you do this, you'll be part of a movement that's everyone around the world is doing. And we are all working towards restoring the planet. And they love the idea. They all want to be part of it. You know, a global project, right, where you're all working towards restoring. So you're counting now how many new animals have come, how many more tigers do you have, how many more deer do you have, right? Every animal, right? So you're looking at all of that. Because some scientists are now in despair saying all the mammals are going to die off by the end of the century. But they're looking at the current trend and saying, that's what it's going to go to. Just like I did with my granddaughter, right? But it doesn't go that way, right? So we can change. So when we change, we bring it back.
Everybody turning completely vegan.
Correct. Cost of that? Well, I see the benefit of that. Yeah. The subsidies will have to change. Everything changes. Basically, we are being subsidized into consuming that. Okay. But that's the colonial model. Because the colonial model wants us to grow, and get sicker and sicker and sicker because they make money when you get sick. Right? So the more diabetes you have, the more people have diabetes, the more money they make. Right? So that's the system we have today. So you're restoring it, you're creating a system that's based on health foundation. And so I see benefit to it, but if you look at dollar costs, it will be just adjusting the subsidies. So imagine the government subsidizes everyone to restore forests instead of growing cows. That's the kind of mindset shift that needs to happen. Of course, in the current system, because it's all based on extraction, it's an extraction economy that we are creating, then, you won't get the revenues for doing that. That's why it's not getting done now. It's outside the light. Well, okay, I went to Rajasthan. When I went to Rajasthan, they still had food. So, and they were some of the strongest people I've met, the women in Rajasthan, because they were carrying like 40 kgs of firewood on their head and walking 5 kilometers. I couldn't do that. They could do it, right? But the hunger, malnutrition comes when you don't have food. And they don't have food because their forests are being destroyed. Their land is becoming more and more infertile over time because they're raising animals to sell to others. So I've watched the forest die in front of my eyes, over time. So I used to keep going every year, and you could see the forest slowly dying. And it's because they were raising animals to sell the milk or to sell the goat. So once they cannot raise cows on that land, they start raising goats. Because then they can sell the goat, they get 100 rupees per kg of the goat. And once the goats finish, it becomes a desert. The goats eat everything, including the roots, and they even dig everything and eat it. So that was the main issue I saw. And basically, if they're lacking variety in their food because they can only eat whatever they're growing there. That's their main problem. What is happening in the system is that when they sell produce, they have to sell very cheap because the middleman is going to add some to it, and by the time it gets to the city, it's expensive, right? But then you go and bring it from the city back to the village, it becomes 10 times more expensive for them. So even though they are the ones producing the food, they are paying the most for the food they're eating. So it's systemic. The problem is systemic. So all I'm saying is if you eat enough calories, you will get enough protein on a plant-based diet. Okay? With a variety of foods. And even, normally it's 0.8 grams per kg of body weight. That's what the WHO says. And even that is roughly about 6% or 7% of your calories if it's a 2,000 calorie diet. right? And that is greater than the amount of protein that's there in human breast milk. Human breast milk is 6% of calories. And that's when we are growing the fastest. So as a species, as a mammal, we are the mammal that needs the least amount of protein because we have the least amount of protein in our breast milk compared to every other mammal. All other mammals have more calories in protein in their breast milk because all other mammals grow faster than us. It takes us 18 years to grow from baby to adult, and a cow grows from baby to adult in 18 months, right? So protein has been manipulated. The requirements of protein has been manipulated and so on so that you're made to consume more and more. The US is saying 30% of your food has to be protein. So you're forced to go eat meat to satisfy that. Why? Who put that number in there? Well, a whole bunch of industry people are sitting there in the committee. So if you let industry people define your dietary guidelines, you're going to get junk, not science. So anyway, Dr. McDougall has a line has a web page on that, on the protein requirements, and he says WHO is saying 5% is enough calories for protein. Thank you all very, very much. A stimulating discussion.
Definitely. Engineering Planet B isn't just a talk, it's a call to action. So thank you, sir, for igniting our systems thinking brain. And also a big thanks for this wonderful session. For the audience, there's an arrangement of refreshment outside. So, a huge thanks for the audience as well for such insightful discussion. And yes, that's a wrap on tonight's leadership lecture series. Thank you everyone for joining.